Howdy, Hacksters! If you're on Facebook, I'm so sorry for the service interruption. I just got an emergency phone call. But we are ready to go online, and it is Friday evening, and I'm so ready for the weekend. I bet you are too. So, today, I am going to be sharing this Adafruit Circuit Playground Bluefruit, which I keep almost saying the wrong thing because it is extremely close in both name and structure to the Adafruit Circuit Playground Express, which is one of my favorite boards, especially for beginners, as it has this user-friendly 10 RGB LED ring, which this one also shares. There's a lot that's shared between these two, and we'll go over that in a second, as well as what the differences are. So let's do a little close-up here. Yes, here we go. Let me get some focus on there for you. Yes. Okay, so like I was saying, there's this 10 RGB LED ring. You've got a couple of user input buttons. You've got a little buzzer speaker thingy. You've got sound input, aka a little microphone. This little eye here indicates an ambient light sensor. You've got a switch for user input as well. And you've got a temperature sensor and a little accelerometer in here as well for sensing motion and taps and things like that. There's a lot to love about these boards. They have, for example, analog in and out, I believe. And there's also a ton of accessories for them, including, for example, this Cricket, which is a robotic breakout kit. I've currently got a giant robot claw plugged into this. But it also has outs for DC motors and capacitive touch and things like that, and tons of servos and signal I/O and whatever. So this is one of the breakouts with which you could use the Adafruit Circuit Playground Bluefruit, but this is an Express that's on here. They also both have a micro USB port for programming and power, and a LiPo or other JST battery connector. You could connect AA's, AAA's, whatever kind of battery packs you have, and also lithium polymer rechargeable batteries. You've got a reset pin in the button. Now in the middle, reset button in the middle. There we go. And let's take a look at the product pages and some documentation. My favorite thing. Tariq says, how are you? Thank you. I am very well. A little flustered, but that's how it goes. So, of course, the main difference between the Bluefruit version and the Express is that, as the name implies, it has Bluetooth low energy. That actually, you can see in the middle of the board is the Bluetooth icon, and that kind of replaces in the Circuit Playground Express, where you have an infrared transmitter and receiver for doing like a remote control kind of signal. So instead of that, you have Bluetooth, which is super cool. More on the exact specs. You can see it's really hard in this lighting to show you these beautiful RGB LEDs, but they do look gorgeous. Even if I can't show you on camera, you can look here. I've got all these links, the product pages and things linked underneath this video in the description. So, the Circuit Playground Bluefruit is their third board in the Circuit Playground series. There is the Classic and the Express, which use different chips, so they have slightly different capabilities. And similarly, a big difference between the Circuit Playground Express and the Circuit Playground Bluefruit is that this one does not support MakeCode at this time, and there's no ETA for when it might be added. So you can program it in Arduino or CircuitPython, which is Adafruit's version of MicroPython, which is Python on microcontrollers. It's very nice. Both of those are really nice to work with, but MakeCode, Microsoft MakeCode, is also a really nice programming environment that allows you to program things in drag and drop code, as well as JavaScript, I think, and Python, and makes it really easy for people who aren't yet ready to write text code, all the time yet. But it helps you kind of get the hang of writing text code by converting back and forth between the drag and drop interface and that. So that's a little bit of a drawback, but you do get that Bluetooth connectivity, and we're going to explore an application for that in just a second. So it's based on an nRF52840 chip from Nordic. It's a Cortex M4 processor with Bluetooth low energy support. You got 10 mini NeoPixels. Each one can display any color. You've got, as we mentioned, triple axis accelerometer, including tap detection and free fall detection. Your temperature sensor, light sensor, sound, mini speaker, push buttons, and slide switch, as we mentioned. 8 alligator clip friendly input and output pins, as well as some analog and digital in and out, and some ground pins. You've got I2C UART 6 pins that can do analog inputs, and multiple PWM outputs, a green on LED so you know when it's powered, red number 13 LED for basic blinking. That's really nice when you're working with Arduino, because that's kind of the classic pin on Arduino for the LED to be mounted on. You've got your reset button, as I mentioned, 2 megs of SPI flash storage, and you can read the rest of this. And it can act like a serial port, keyboard, mouse, joystick, or MIDI interface, which is pretty cool. You can build your own keyboards and things with this. I forgot, actually, a year ago on Pi Day. Oh, let's see. Synthenada. See if that comes up. Here we go. Empanada synthesizer. This is what I built a year ago using the Adafruit Circuit Playground Express, which is a synthesizer that plays music when through conductive Marmite spread, salty spread. So lots that you can do with these right out of the hat. I've actually got a few other projects with this series. And as I mentioned, there's a bunch of add-ons that you can get. There's this bolt-on kit for the Circuit Playground Microbit Flora or Gemma. It's just a nice little set of screws and nuts, or bolts and nuts, pardon me, that enables you to connect wires, to these pins very neatly, easily. It's easily undone. It's very secure while it's on there. I love this system. I've used it with the microbit and it's super great. Then there's also the Adafruit Cricket that I just mentioned. If you're curious about that one, I've done a video on it before. Oh, here's my video on the Circuit Playground Express from 2017, also linked in the description. But then we have the Cricket, which is an easy and powerful robot brain expansion. You can find more information on the Cricket in the links in the description below. But one thing that I found really helpful was, as usual, Adafruit has some amazing documentation for this stuff. So there's a whole overview and a guided tour of what all the stuff on the outside is. But I also found really helpful, when working with this list of internally used pins. I wanted to use the slide switch in order to control whether or not my interface was active. And you'll see what that means in just a moment. And so they give you a list for what each internal, the buttons, the switch, the NeoPixels and stuff, all the pins that those use, which is really wonderful. They've got the Arduino NRF52 firmware core. They have a couple of example projects, including a custom heart rate monitor. This looks really interesting to me. I'm all about biohacking and biofeedback, and so I think that this is really interesting. And so on that note, there's some really cool things that folks have done to integrate the Adafruit Playground Bluefruit with this Neosensory Buzz vibrating wristband, which is for haptic feedback, sort of augmenting your senses with vibration. So let me show you what I've actually got going on here. And this is going to require a little bit of extra material in order to... did you reset? The code that I have, I'm going to reset it. Okay. So this is the Neosensory Buzz wristband, and what it has is 4 vibration motors, which you can feel along your wrist in different positions. And you can control these with great granularity and lots of options within the Arduino IDE over Bluetooth. So what you do is you have this strapped to your wrist, and then you pair it with the Arduino code that you load onto the Bluefruit device. And that enables you to arbitrarily program this thing to vibrate according to Arduino code that you've loaded on here. So the example that I've been doing, which I'm going to publish as a project soon, is when I switch this on, then this will begin to do its little rumble vibration, test vibration, and I'm going to attach it to this jar so that you can hear it. I'm hoping that comes through. And then when I switch it off again, it should stop. It actually takes a couple of seconds to stop, but there, and it is stopped completely because I flipped the switch on the Adafruit Bluefruit. So this is all done with code that I will publish, but it's really a very simple modification to the example code that Neosensory have published for the Buzz to be used in conjunction with Bluefruit devices, specifically using the Bluefruit library. So let's take a quick look at that. And this was all actually the subject recently of a contest that we did. So if you're interested in this kind of thing, always check out our contests. This one wrapped up recently, and I was a judge, so I got to see a bunch of these cool projects and get inspired by it. And including this one where you're adding sensory perception to any prosthetic arm. They were able to sense when you were touching conductive things and give you a vibrational feedback depending on which finger it was, designed to be used on any prosthetic. So a very cool, affordable way to extend any existing prosthetics that you have, so that you don't have to, you can add sensory capabilities to those without spending a bunch of extra money. Very cool. And there's some software tools designed to enable this, including the Neosensory SDK for Bluefruit, which I found extremely helpful. In fact, I ran into a couple of roadblocks while programming this. And when I went to go look up what the problem could be, it was just because I hadn't read through all the documentation yet, which is really pathetic because it's quite short and it's very approachable. So, yeah, this has it's not just this Buzz wristband that you can connect this to, of course. There's tons of other things that you can do with the Bluetooth Circuit Playground Bluefruit. This is really hard for me, guys, because I've said Circuit Playground Express so many times that it's like one phrase in my mind. But they do have other examples. For example, this advertising beacon for Bluetooth, BLE UART controller to control things over Bluetooth. Super cool here. Yeah, and again, you can program this with Arduino code or CircuitPython, although it's not yet usable with Microsoft MakeCode, which is a shame, but I'm sure it will be soon. You can get these accessories. I would totally check those out if you're interested in using this, because they make it, the original board itself is so versatile, and it has so many things built in that are designed to make it easy for you to get started with this. If you want to do LED projects, if you want to do wearable projects with like a plug-in, like a battery pack, if you want to do anything with button inputs, touch inputs, sound in or out, ambient light in, all kinds of different sensors and things. This is a great little board for getting started with, and I absolutely recommend it for beginners. There's only a few boards that I feel that way about, and this is, I just think that they've done an amazing job. Of course, with this one, you have a slightly limited version of what you can use to program it, but what you lose with that, you gain in being able to use it over Bluetooth and make it talk to other devices. So I think this is really cool. Go check out the links in the description below. I'll put the link to the Synthanata there as well, because who doesn't want an edible synthesizer? This is really the only non-edible part of it. I think you'll enjoy it a lot. Alyssa says, I have the Express and I love it. I think that it inspires that feeling in lots of people. It's just a really solid beginner board with a ton of options for expanding it into more complex uses and interactions. So, and what I meant to say is that it's not just for beginners. It is a great board for beginners because it has all these built-in things: the NeoPixels, the touch sensors, the temperature sensor, the lights, light sensor, the little buzzer and everything. It's very nice as an all-in-one getting started board, but then it does have all of these extendable options. So like the Cricut, you can do very complex things with this as well. You can program it in all these different ways, and you can get kits to expand it. So it's not just for beginners, but it is great for beginners. And it's great for people to move from the very beginning part of on the Express programming like drag and drop Scratch style code to including on the Bluefruit programming in Python and CircuitPython and Arduino code. You know, real programming as it were, but things that you might use in the real world. Although, you know, plenty of art installations can be run off of drag and drop code. There's nothing wrong with that. I've done a ton of wearables based on these boards, just using the drag and drop code because, you know, sometimes you want to learn how to do something in particular and the tutorial that you find uses one kind of programming or another. It's really versatile in that way, and I think it's got plenty of room for you to grow with it. So it's not just for beginners, but it is very beginner friendly. Yes, it's very versatile. You can get as close to the metal as you want. I admit that I'm not an incredibly advanced engineer. I don't have a EE degree, so I'm not trying to do anything incredibly complex with software, for example, but you could. You could. What limitations would you run into? So, with this one, the Bluefruit version, I believe that not being able to use MakeCode with it is a little bit of a limitation if you're a beginner. You might want to go for the Express first because it has also that drag and drop code capability. So that's a little bit of a limitation with the Bluefruit, but I think it makes up for that with the communication options. Other limitations, it doesn't have a ton of pins exposed. If you want to run a bunch of different sensors and servos and things that aren't already included on this, you might want to either go for a different board or spring for one of the expanders, like the Cricket kit that gives you a bunch of signal I/O, a ton of like 4 servo outputs. This can drive stepper motors or a bunch of DC motors, NeoPixel outs and stuff. So, you know, if you want to go beyond using like 8 to 10 pins for your projects, then this might not be the board for you. What else? Honestly, I was gonna say machine learning, but we just had the TinyML summit, and there's so much available now for microcontrollers that I'm not even confident saying that. I'm sure you probably could run machine learning on this. So it's really hard to think of something now that you know, you would run into limitations on here. I think with your multiple different programming options, it's really hard to find something that's that hard. Yeah, Alyssa says, I've been working with microcontrollers for years and still use MakeCode because it's just fast and easy. Exactly. It's the drag and drop interface is so easy. And if you run into limitations with that, when you're working with MakeCode, it does have some limitations. I'm getting off topic here because the Bluefruit does not work with MakeCode, but just to finish the thought, you know, it does. Sometimes you'll run into things that you're like, how would I actually execute this logical thing? And you can switch over to handwritten code and do that, and then switch back to the drag and drop code, and it'll usually be able to convert it. So, all right. I feel like I'm getting a bit off topic here, but this is a really cool board, and I'm excited to program more things with the Neosensory Buzz. Using that, I've already made a sort of all-day mindfulness timer with this, and I'll be publishing a project on that soon, so stay tuned. We'll see you soon. Have an awesome weekend. So happy for the weekend. And as always, hack on.